Here we go again. If you haven't seen me already, I'm the Associate Chair at the Social and Behavioral Sciences here at Odessa College. Name's Joseph Johnson. I also teach history, so we're going to take a look at my course. Some people have asked about the how to lock things, how to put things behind other things. Kind of keep the course organized and sequenced so that students will look at the material before going into their assignment and things like that. Because if you're like me, you've noticed that some students, they'll go into the grade book and they'll click on this grade book and they'll do the assignment through the grade book, or they'll do it through the calendar tab, and that's it. They won't read the material, they won't read the required readings, they won't look at anything. And if it's not that assignment, they'll do it horribly. They'll fail the class or what have you. Or they'll do the discussions through the discussion tab. So this is how I have tackled this problem in my class. You can tackle it a couple different ways, but this is one of the recommendations that I tend to throw out there. First thing is first, locking things. So I lock everything behind the first week syllabus. So if you notice, um, let's use one of my live classes for an example. That's fall. We're going to use one of my summer classes, summer one classes. Summer one's going to be beautiful. So, first things first, I have these release conditions. You can click this. There's visible, hidden, and release conditions. I recommend this. This is how you do it. You use the release conditions for a lot of your course material. So I have a availability and access until. So I don't make anything. I know we open our courses usually the Sunday before, but I don't make anything available until the day of classes. Because I've had a few of those in the past where they did one or two assignments, like literally that Sunday or Monday, and then nothing, everything else. And I'm like, the last thing that I logged in was this Monday before class actually began. Well, that doesn't work with our gradebook setup. So I make sure that nothing is accessible before the actual day of classes. And then you can adjust your unaccessibility. You can make it accessible until like the end of the term, until midterms, until like a week out, 2 weeks out. That's up to you. I'm actually going to experiment with 1 week after the due dates so that they lose that. Kind of put a little pressure on them. In the past, I made it until like the midterm, until like the modules before the midterm will close after the midterm's done. That type of thing. I've done that, and I've gotten some decent results on some of those. But second thing that you can do, and this one will show it, I can lock the whole module behind a certain activity. Whether it is reading anything, one of the required readings, if this thing would scroll down, there we go. One of the required readings or what have you. In this case, I put it underneath the simple syllabus quiz. This is the first week reporting item that is required for everybody. So I put everything behind that. If you'll notice, all of these require that first week syllabus. I'm going to move myself over here. So it all requires this, right? This here. And you'll see this rule. You can add another rule, but this is an or rule, not an additional to. So if I add this one, it's going to be an or, and I don't want that. So I make it sure everything is locked behind that before. So once they do the simple syllabus quiz, the rest of the modules will be opened up. Now, you'll get this little thing, especially I get it all the time. Professor Johnson, the module's open, but the assignments aren't open. You're absolutely right. The assignments aren't open because I require you to, and you go into the edit button here. You click those three dots, go into the edit button. This is how you can upload an image, write your description, even mess with your release conditions, and even provide an alternative text to that image and what have you for accessibility. You got to be accessible. But I do this one, advanced in sequence. Students can, I'm going to move myself again, students can access the module's content in sequence. A course link cannot be added to a learning module when force sequence is activated. So if you use course links, you might not want to do that. That all depends on you. But one big caveat, when you do this, it's not going to show up in the grade book or the calendar that these items are due. So some students are going to be surprise. So explain this in your welcome video. Explain this in your announcements. I usually provide an announcement on this. Students will, as they work through this, they'll get little check marks on these items. Let's use Module 3 as an example. So once they click this, once they open this, the first thing they have to do is click the Learning Outcomes address this week. Once they go through that, it will show a little confirm, and they'll get a little check mark on that. And then you can click lesson materials. This is how I have mine organized. You got to make sure your organization is correct whenever you do this. And so I want them to go through this one by one type of thing. And so all the lesson materials are stacked. They won't be able to access this video set down here without first looking at my PowerPoint. Now, all they have to do really is look through it, and they'll get that green check mark or a half moon. If they get a half moon, they can click the little circle on the side, and it'll give them a green check mark, and that will unlock the next thing in progress. So they'll click on my PowerPoints. They should download them. They're supposed to download them. They'll look at the audio lectures, listen to my audio lectures with my notes that are attached to that. And then they'll look through any supplemental videos. They don't have to watch all these. I recommend that they should. And then they go through their chapters 5, 6, and 7. That's the readings for that week. And then they will upload their notes for that. So until they finish and get those little green check marks on their chapters, they won't be able to upload their chapter note reading, their notes for their chapter readings. And then they have their primary sources that they have to read through from each chapter. And then they get access to the discussion board. And then after they're done with the discussion board, they get access to the module test. And then whenever they get done with their module test, they get access to their reflection journal. This is kind of an exit journal. So I want them to show me what they learned. What have you. And then they get access to the checklist to make sure that they did everything, which if they went through everything and they have access to the checklist, they did do everything. So they won't be able to do anything out of sequence. Keep that in mind whenever you do something like this. There are other ways of doing this, and I played around. This has been the most beneficial for me in my course design, to stagger it through there and test some of the materials like that. Notice that I also have this release conditions here. So with the discussion boards in Blackboard act a little bit differently than, say, Canvas or what have you. Whenever I do this for sequence, students can still access the discussion boards regardless through the discussion board tab, regardless of that for sequence. And so to fix that, I made sure, 1, they can't access it after the course is closed, but 2, block it behind that simple syllabus.